Yashodanandana Braja Janarandana Yashodanandana Braja Janarandana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Jayam Vishnupad Paramahis Sato Vrajacharya, Tadasya Smad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki, ISKCON's Foundracharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki, Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Ki, Shri Giri Govardhan Ki, Sankirtan Yagya Ki, Go Premanande. All glories to their Samo devotees. All glories to their Samo devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. And this, my head's a bit too high. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, devotees, we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 28, titled Kapila's Instructions on the Execution of Devotional Service. And this morning we are reading verse 38. 38, yes, just a sec. 38, right. Deho P. Did I chant Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya? I did. No, I didn't.
Yes.
I did. Okay. So let's begin again. Deho P. Daiva Vashaga Kalo Karma Yavat Swarambakam Prati Samikshata Eva Saso Tam Sa Prapancham Adirudha Samadhi Yoga Svapnam Punar Na Bhajate Pratibuddha Vasto Deho Pidaiva Vashaga Kalu Karma Yavat Swarambakam Prati Samikshata Eva Saso Tamsa Prapancham Adirodha Samadhi Yoga Swapnam Purnana Bhajate Pratibuddha Vasto Deho Pidaiva Vashaga Kalu Karma Yavat Swarambakam Prati Samikshata Eva Saso Tamsa prapancham adhirodha samadhi yoga. Swapnam purnana bhajate pratibodha vastu. Deho pidaiva vashaga kalu karma yavat. Swarambakam prati samikshata eva saso. Tamsa prapancham adhirodha samadhi yoga. Swapnam purnarna bhajate pratibodha vastu.
Deho pidaiva visagha kalu karmayava. Sarva svarambhakam prati samiksha eva satu. Tamsa prapancham adhirodha samadhi yoga. Sapnam punanna bhajate buddha vastu. Deho pidaiva vashaga kalu karmayava. Svarambhakam prati samikshata eva sasu. Tamsa prapancham adhirodha samadhi yoga. Swapnam punarna bhajate pratibodha vastu. Deho pidaiva vashaga kalu karmayava. Svarambhakam prati samikshata eva sasu. Tamsa prapancham adhirodha samadhi yoga. Swapnam punarna bhajate pratibodha vastu.
Deho videva vasaka kalu karmayava. Svarambhakam prati samikshata eva sasu. Tamsa prapancham adhirodha samadhi yoga. Swapnam punarna bhajate pratibodha vastu.
Svarambhakam prati samikshata eva sasu. Tamsa prapancham adhirodha samadhi yoga. Swapnam punarna bhajate pratibodha vastu.
Deha, the body, api, moreover, daiva vashaga, under the control of the personality of Godhead. Kalu, indeed, karma, activities, yavat, as much as, swa arambakam, begun by himself, prati samikshate, continues to function, eva, certainly, sa aso, along with the senses, tam, the body, sa prapancham, with its expansion, adiruddha samadhi yoga, being situated in samadhi by yoga practice, svapnam, born in a dream, punna, again, na, not, bhajate, he does accept as his own, pratibuddha, awake, vastu, to his constitutional position. Translation. The body of such a liberated yogi, along with the senses, is taken charge of by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and it functions until its destined activities are finished. The liberated devotee, being awake to his constitutional position and thus situated in samadhi, the highest perfectional stage of yoga, does not accept the byproducts of the material body as his own. Thus, he considers his bodily activities to be like the activities of a body in a dream. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The following questions may be posed. As long as the liberated soul is in contact with the body, why don't the bodily activities affect him? Doesn't he actually become contaminated by the action and reaction of material activities? In answer to such questions, this verse explains that the material body of a liberated soul is taken charge of by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is not acting due to the living force of the living entity. It is simply acting as a reaction to past activities. Even after being switched off, an electric fan moves for some time. That movement is not due to the electric current, but is a continuation of the last movement. Similarly, although a liberated soul appears to be acting just like an ordinary man, his actions are to be accepted as the continuation of past activities. In a dream, one may see himself expanded through many bodies, but when awake, he can understand that those bodies were all false. Similarly, although a liberated soul has the byproducts of the body, children, wife, house, etc., he does not identify himself with those bodily expansions. He knows that they're all products of the material dream. The gross body is made of the gross elements of matter, and the subtle body is made of mind, intelligence, ego, and contaminated consciousness. If one can accept the subtle body of a dream as false and not identify with oneself with that body, then certainly an awake person need not identify with the gross body. As one who is awake has no connection with the activities of the body in a dream, an awakened, liberated soul has no connection with the activities of the present body. In other words, because he is acquainted with his constitutional position, he never accepts the bodily concept of life. Dehopi daiva vashaga kalukarma yavat. Swarambakam pratisamikshata eva sasu. Tam sa prapanchamadhiruda samadhi yoga. Swapnam purnarna bhajate pratibuddhavastu. The body of such a liberated yogi, along with the senses, is taken charge of by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and it functions until its destined activities are finished. The liberated devotee, being awake to his constitutional position, and thus situated in samadhi, the highest perfectional stage of yoga, does not accept the byproducts of the material body as his own. Thus he considers his bodily activities to be like the activities of a body in a dream. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachade Tarne Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpacharupyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. So, here then, Lord Kapila is describing another aspect of the transcendental situation of the liberated yogi. Of course, we know there are these two perspectives that we have been and continue to be presented with directly and or indirectly. Those are the perspectives of one, first of all, the particular type of yogi that Lord Kapila is talking about. Means the Sankhya yogi, Ashtanga yogi, that sort of yogi. But then, as Srila Prabhupada has pointed out from time to time, these things apply to the devotees in somewhat different ways, depending on the particular whatever is involved. But there are these two types of relevance, and we need to keep that in mind and not apply at least some of these understandings absolutely directly in Krishna consciousness, like the whole point about just focusing the mind. Just focusing the mind. Doing breathing exercises. And in this way, developing the capability to focus the mind, to control the mind, and then focus the controlled mind. Of course, we must control the mind and focus the mind properly on what the mind should be focused on, which is Krishna. Krishna and Krishna's service, Krishna's instructions, the devotees, their instructions, particularly the very advanced devotees, particularly the spiritual master. These things need to be done, but the procedure is somewhat different. And it's very important to grasp this. It's very important to grasp this. Otherwise, as happens with some people, they read Shastra and they don't understand, in certain cases particularly, like this. They don't understand that this is a particular perspective on what is ultimately a greater subject. And in order to understand it properly and to apply it properly, ultimately, to apply it properly, one needs some specific instruction. One needs some specific instruction. Otherwise, one will make the mistake of thinking a particular approach, a particular form of practice of Krishna consciousness is really what we're meant to do, whereas in terms of the detail, the specific activities, it may not actually be like that. There may be some more specialized application which we have to learn about in terms of it being Kali Yuga, in terms of the ways that we're meant to practice Krishna consciousness in this day and age. So there are examples of this here and there in different places, in Srimad Bhagavatam, even in Bhagavad Gita also. For example, in Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 6th chapter, it's a very clear-cut example. Right at the beginning of the 6th chapter, Parikshit Maharaj, having heard at the end of the 5th chapter about the horrors of the hellish planets, it's just completely incredible. So as a soft-hearted devotee, he feels concerned that if we don't do something to help the conditioned souls, if we don't help them to become Krishna conscious, ASAP, then so many of them are going to have to go to those places. And it's just going to be a ghastly, ghastly time for them, just too much. And a soft-hearted devotee like Maharaj Parikshit will feel strongly that we have to do something to help. So then at the beginning of the 6th chapter, the discussion continues, and the question rises, what to do? Maharaj Parikshit asks, what can we do? How can we help these people who will otherwise go to hell if they don't get some quite strong help pretty quickly? So he asks that question, what process can they undertake? And Shukadev Goswami, the guru, the instructor, the authority, he says, he suggests, he presents the idea, well, they could always do prayaschita. They could do some, not just they could always do, they should do prayaschita. This is what he says. Prayaschita meaning a form of material activity in which one counteracts the effects of bad activities that one has performed by just doing some good activities, and in this way rebalancing one's karma so that one is no longer in a very serious deficit with bad karma, and therefore one's going to have to go to those hellish planets. So this is the proposal of Shukadev Goswami. But then Maharaj Parikshit says, wait a minute. Surely that's not really like the best thing. What's going to really help them? We want to really help them. Surely, if they just do some sort of balancing act with the reactions of their bad activities and reactions of their good activities, surely it's not going to really help them so much, because the seed from which their bad activities have grown, the seed is still there. And it's such a seed, it is such a seed, it will not just go away. While it's there, then problems will occur. Serious problems will occur, and the person will inevitably, sooner or later, somehow or other, get back on that same track to the hellish planets by doing some nonsense activities. So surely we need a different process. And Shukadev Goswami sort of, you could say, congratulates him or appreciates that you've understood that just balancing one type of material activity with another type of material activity is not the answer. Particularly in this case, or in any case really, but specifically here now, in this case of having become a candidate for the hellish planets. Yes. So then he starts instructing Maharaj Parikshit in the famous and extremely valuable narration, the story of Ajamil, and how he was a first-class candidate for the hellish planets. Maybe he would have spent some time in one hellish planet, suffering in that particular way for some particular set of sinful activities he performed, but he performed other sets, other types of sinful activities. So then he would go on a tour, visiting different of the hellish planets. He would go to some other hellish planet and then horribly suffer in some other way, and then probably another type of hellish planet. Because we read there in the last chapter of the 5th canto that if someone, for example, eats meat, that sort of thing, becomes involved in that sort of thing, there's a particular type of hellish planet for them. But if someone takes intoxication, for example, then there's a different hellish planet with quite a different type of suffering. Can I make a suggestion? I don't think we need to bring our phones to the class, do we? Unless there's some super urgent business. He said, looking around for his phone. And I must say, I do recall in the temple room many years ago when we used to have gatherings, like, substantial gatherings, telling the devotees to turn off their phones, and my phone then rang. I remember that vividly. And one can always make a joke about it, but still. All right, so here, this is another case. This is another case where some instruction is being given to take up some particular program of activity in order to help oneself progress in yoga, in God consciousness. But actually for us, that particular program of activity, breath control, is not practical. It will not work. We may try. It will not work. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada, of course, pointed out that we need to chant the holy names of the Lord. And that will work. And it does work. That's our experience, that it works. It's amazing, actually. Of course, one has to take it seriously. One really does. But if one does that, then one finds it really works. Whereas the proposal of let's do some breathing exercises to get control of the mind so that when it is controlled, it can be focused on the Lord and one can enter into some meditation on the Lord and come to an advanced level. That's just not going to work. It's just not going to work. So, therefore, we can appreciate the essential, the need of having someone like Srila Prabhupada, the members, bona fide members of our Guru Parampara. That is so essential. Otherwise, even if one sticks to Shastra, the likelihood of mistakes and, mistakes which may sort of stop one's progress. The likelihood of such mistakes, it's more or less inevitable that such mistakes will happen. Anyway, that's just one point, by the way. But here, an interesting point is made that the advanced liberated yogi, or we could say advanced devotee, that the body, including the senses of that advanced devotee, advanced yogi, is taken charge of by the Supreme Lord. And therefore it just goes on functioning in the ways that it has been going on until the prescribed time of departure is reached. Every one of us has first of all, we have a best by time on our heads, although we can't exactly see it. So best by is one thing, but, the point of just being thrown out, thrown away, because that's it, it's the end. That's also there. It's also there for all of us. And, there's enough of us here who are in the later stages of the whole process. There's enough of us. So this is how it will work. This is how it does work for the advanced devotee. And Srila Prabhupada describes it very nicely in the purport, that first of all, Prabhupada raises a couple of questions, that as long as we're in these bodies, including the liberated souls, the very advanced devotees, while we're still in our bodies, then how could it be said that in the case at least of the advanced devotee, the liberated yogi, the bodily activities don't affect them? Wouldn't it be that they also become contaminated by the actions and reactions of activities like the ordinary conditioned souls, become contaminated. Of course, in Bhagavad Gita, the discussion is there, and it's there in Prabhupada's literatures, that in so many ways the devotees are doing things which on the surface are exactly like, or exactly not just like, but exactly the same things that the non-devotees do. Like our devotees now, a few of them are, what are they cutting? Beans, is it? The bean queens, yes. We used to have one devotee in Cato Ridge we called the bean queen. Anyway, that's okay. So this cutting of beans is being done for Krishna. It's special. It's different because it's devotional service. But on another level, at least your ordinary person will say, no, it's not. It's just the same thing. The same beans, bought from the same place, grown by the same people, being cut up in the same ways. So, what's the difference? But of course, there's a vast difference. The difference between vikarma and akarma. Vikarma meaning sinful activity, which binds the person to this world, and akarma meaning activity which is free from any type of reaction because it's being done for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, including making sweets, is it? Oh, paneer, sorry. Anyway, you know what I mean. So it works. These things work in different ways. And Prabhupada here gives an example that he gives in different places. It's one of the first examples actually that I heard when I joined the temple many years ago. The example of the electric fan. That the electric fan, when it's unplugged, when it's no longer connected with the source of power, for a little while it still spins. And you look at it and you think, yeah, it's spinning just like when it's plugged in. So it's the same. But it's not. It's no longer connected. But still some sort of something is there in relation to the initial activity. Prabhupada, what does Prabhupada say? That yes, in the case of the fan, it is simply acting. The electric fan, after being switched off, an electric fan moves for some time. That movement is not due to the electric current, but is a continuation of the last movement. Similarly, although a liberated soul appears to be acting just like an ordinary man, his actions are to be accepted as the continuation of past activities. So for us, some of us, for example, some of us have male bodies, some have female. And in many ways, we're performing activities, those with male bodies, performing activities which are just activities that people with male bodies form and perform, and vice versa. Someone is cooking and doing things like this. Someone is managing. And these are activities which men do, or these are activities which ladies do. So they're going on in terms of the previous actions of the previous ways of life. But the devotees who are with the male bodies, who are doing male type activities, and at least in certain cases, those activities have no reactions, karmic reactions. Whereas the ordinary people in male bodies who are, for example, doing some management, or in female bodies who are doing some cooking, some cutting of vegetables, for them, there's reactions. There's definitely reactions. So the point is for the devotees that we need to come to that state of consciousness. We need to do that in order for our situation in life to be like that. And Srila Prabhupada gives a further example, which is another very nice example. Prabhupada gives the example that that we dream, even devotees, sometimes we dream of different things. But when we dream, when we wake up, we know it was just a dream. We don't need to take it seriously. Occasionally devotees get messages through dreams from the Lord. There are stories of that in our literatures. But so often what we dream of, even as devotees, there's no real substance to it. There's no real sort of consequence to it. It's just the mind doing some things. So when we wake up, then we understand, that was just a dream, so what? So Prabhupada says that if one can accept the subtle body of a dream as false and not identify oneself with that body, then certainly an awake person need not identify with the gross body. And therefore, as Prabhupada also says, although a liberated soul has the byproducts of the body, children, wife, house, etc., he doesn't identify himself with these bodily expansions. Therefore, he remains fully engaged in devotional service and not just caught up in the very typical circumstances of material life. And even when the devotee has to give attention to body, to children, wife, and related things, but the advanced devotee at least relates with all these things or people in Krishna consciousness. That I'm maintaining my family in Krishna conscious ways, in ways which will help them progress in Krishna consciousness, and not just fulfilling their material desires or my own material desires, but using the money that I earn to provide different facilities which will help them in their Krishna consciousness. This is the application of these principles here for us as practicing devotees. So then, when the devotee is really absorbed in the way of life like that, then Krishna takes charge of the body and the senses. And when Krishna takes charge, the body, the senses, the mind, the intelligence, then the devotee finds that there's no inclination, or step by step less inclination attraction to performing material activity, less and less interest, but rather greater and greater inspiration and enthusiasm to perform activities in devotional service, and greater experience of the nectar of Krishna consciousness in doing that. So as Prabhupada says, in other words, because the advanced devotee is acquainted with his constitutional position, he never accepts the bodily concept of life. But under the shelter of Krishna, under the shelter of Lord Krishna, the devotee accepts that, who am I? I am a devotee. What activities should I perform? I should do devotional service and not get caught up on the material level. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ram Govinda Maharaj, some comment. Surit Damodar Prabhu. Any comments or questions from anyone? Okay. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So I'll leave this all for you. We just need to take the SSD.
Is that the reason you asked? And I went to the for that. No. Days it comes with far. He knows the stuff but that person is currently in India. He's not he just got all the documents and get it. You should just post it. So if you can give it to the temple, then we can arrange it. It's still who I is. Oh. Peter has made contacts. Yeah, he sent a message saying that he wants to return to spiritual life, he's believing. Not to me. Oh, he wants Arjuna Acharya, well, Deva. He wanted Arjuna Acharya's contact details. In other words, he read that. Isn't it? I see it. Oh, the people who took them off more. But now, what's his name? Bladder cancer. Yeah, that's there. But he wanted somebody to take over. Who was there? No, remember I should. Oh, so maybe contact go? Yeah, contact go. He's more than touch. But please make sure those people know the history. You don't want them to not know the history. Because if he goes there and leaves the stuff, then it starts that with this start with them. So they must know what the meaning is. Otherwise, you have a whole new. We want to give them a chance, no doubt, but people must know. That's what we can do. Yeah, wherever they go, yeah, because when they do leave the documents, then they'll stop the thing. Yeah, those people must know.
So, I wasn't able to see what I tried.
Obvious places, obvious, but no one wants to go there and touch that relationship. So no one touch that. No one likes to get into it. Except me. Because people let me touch. Bravo! You better imagine in life if you're working with a right person. No! This is about 300 altogether.
Oh yeah, altogether, but we still might just get this.
This is serious. Oh.
But I'm able. I'm efficient at it. I can use this